You're watching The Buck Stops Here and I'm Barkha Dutt. On the program this evening, when protests erupted across the country after a horrific gang rape in the national capital, it seemed for a moment as if this may be an inflection point for gender rights. But now that we finally have an anti-rape bill ready to be discussed and voted on in Parliament, has the bill been diluted? That's the question we're asking on a day when, after an all-party meeting, several key provisions of what activists had hoped to find included in the bill were diluted. The first term, of course, related to the age of consent. After a political outcry, the government backed down. The age of consent for sexual activity will now be 18 years old. There have also been other changes different from the recommendations made by the Justice Verma panel. The voyeurism clause has been removed altogether, and the punishment for stalking is much less harsh than the government's own ordinance had proposed and that the Justice Verma panel had recommended. On the program today, we'll be asking whether conservatism has watered down the bill and has stalled the momentum for genuine change. But first, Rahul Srivastava brings you the inside story of which political party said what and how the anti-rape bill came to be, taking the shape that it will be when it's brought to Parliament tomorrow.
At Bareilly Station, Samajwadi Party leader Chandranath Singh in police detention. A woman-trained passenger had charged that the ex-MP was drunk and he had misbehaved with her. Later, she withdrew the case as medical tests proved Singh was sober. In distant Delhi, the scare made the Samajwadi Party toughen its opposition to the anti-rape bill.
अगर सरकार ने दादागिरी की जरूरी की तो हम इसको बिल्कुल पास नहीं होने देंगे हम पूरी तरीके से इसका विरोध करेंगे
Without the Samajwadi Party, the government's dependence on the BJP would have increased, especially in the Rajya Sabha. So the Congress, at the meeting of elders from different parties, came to the discussion table with a readiness to accept amendments.
We are endeavoring to bring the bill tomorrow. We have taken the sense of the leaders' views and very, very substantially almost all the views will be incorporated. I believe it is possible to have a law that has the broadest political consensus.
The government has agreed to keep the age of consent for consensual sex at 18, as the BJP, the Akali Dal, the Samajwadi Party, BSP and the JDU, all of them opposed lowering it to 16. Stalking is now going to be a bailable offence, as was demanded by the Samajwadi Party. Since the government had said yes to the changes it wanted, the BJP ended its no to the bill, but blamed the government for messing it up.
They have done it earlier, this consultation with all political parties. They would have been able to draft a better registration. But unfortunately, this government is known for bungling and creating mess out of everything.
Eventually, the Congress party has given in to the numerical charm of the Samajwadi Party. The party, say, has decided, yet again, the course and content of a crucial legislation. But then the UPA government did not have much elbow room at this juncture. The DMK is threatening a pullout over the Lanka issue. So the government opted for a weak bill and strong ties with Mulayam Singh Yadav. But the bill has yet again flagged the strong male-centric character of the Indian Parliament. While the Samajwadi Party opposed it openly, there was a clear gender divide in Parliament. Male MPs from every party either were resisting or were apprehensive. While laws have failed the women, MPs wanted safeguard to avoid misuse.
हम सर्वदलीय बैठक बुला रहे हैं कि जिससे कि अगर इसमें कोई ऐसे प्रोविजन हो कि जिससे कहीं कुछ लगता हो कि इसका दुरुपयोग हो सकता है या ये बात समाज के हित में नहीं है और हमें उम्मीद है कि जो एक बिल तैयार होगा उनमें इन सब चीज़ों को एड्रेस करके तैयार है.
Many women MPs said the amendments amounted to dilution, but refused to step beyond party lines. Perhaps in a telling moment, at the end of the day, women members were seen arguing with male MPs how a tough law is necessary, knowing that passing a somewhat diluted version is better than letting it go the women bill way. In New Delhi, Rahul Srivastava for NDTV.
So our special focus on the buck stops here today. The age of consent for sexual activity remains at 18 and voyeurism has been removed as a clause altogether in the new anti-rape bill that will come before Parliament tomorrow. We're asking today whether politics has actually led to a watering down of some very strong recommendations made by the Justice Verma panel and whether conservatism of a kind has stalled the momentum for genuine change. Let's introduce our panel this evening. We're joined by Renuka Chaudhary, Member of Parliament and spokesperson for the Congress Party. With us in the studio, Nirmala Sitharaman, Senior Leader and spokesperson for the BJP Party. Joining us on the program tonight, Derek O'Brien, Member of Parliament and Leader of the Trinamool Congress Party. Also joining us tonight, somebody who will have a lot to say to see his panel's report changed in the way that it has been, Gopal Subramaniam, Member of the Justice Verma panel and former Solicitor General of India. And with us in the studio, Farhan Naqvi, Member of the National Advisory Council and a writer and activist. Before I come to the politicians, Gopal Subramaniam, if I may start with you. Your panel had a certain set of findings. They were widely applauded by most activists, many women, many young people. Now you find that many of those key recommendations, of course, have been taken away. Marital rape was taken away in the government's own ordinance, and now the bill that's finally going to Parliament removes voyeurism altogether and actually has the government backing down on the age of consent as well, changing the age of consent, which was 16 for 3 decades, by the way, without anyone objecting to it, and now settling for the opposition's suggestion of placing it at 18, at least the key opposition parties, though there were some exceptions like the CPM, which said that the age of consent should be 16 with safeguards. Gopal Subramaniam, are you disappointed with the shape that the anti-rape bill is taking today?
Well, I think, the word disappointment is a very mild word. I think, speaking for myself, it shows an inability to grapple with the fundamental issue of getting equality for women. And I'll tell you 3 things, Barka, to start with. Take the case of marital rape. Can you imagine that in Nepal, the Supreme Court of Nepal has struck down the immunity in respect of marital rape? In Swaziland, you don't have immunity in respect of marital rape. In South Africa, you don't have immunity. You don't have immunity in all the Latin American countries. Are you to believe that India is still so regressive that we cannot actually move from the discourse of honor to that of what is called as the integrity of women's rights? And the second is about from 18 to 16.
Yeah.
Are we living in a hypocritical society where there is going to be no consensual exploration between a man and a woman below 18? And thirdly, we thought that there was a Bill of Rights which we had prescribed for women.
Yeah.
And we find no mention of it at all. Voyeurism, stalking, and I'm surprised that voyeurism is actually most contemporary in India. Do you know how many women actually don't even have toilets in the rural areas? I'm afraid, whatever be the claim of the government, I think the fundamental issue which the committee wanted to actually highlight, which was equality for women, to correct the asymmetry in our society, well, notwithstanding our best intentions, I regret to say government has not matched it with any kind of intensity.